You're wondering why no one hears you, why your prayers feel like echoes, why your rise feels invisible. But what you don't know is, Allah isn't finished. He's still sharpening your voice, still hiding your light, still holding back the moment that will echo for generations. And when that moment comes, it won't just be heard. It will shake everything that once tried to silence you. 1. Allah paused your story because the ending would have been too small. You were so sure this was it. That job, that relationship, that plan. You finally thought things were aligning. Your heart had already started imagining what life might look like if Allah just said yes this time. But instead, it stopped. The door didn't open. The message didn't come. The opportunity you were praying for vanished. And you stood there, confused, embarrassed, even a little angry. You whispered, "Ya Allah, wasn't this what I was preparing for? Wasn't I finally doing things right? Why did you pull it away when I finally reached out with sincerity?" But what you didn't see was what Allah saw building in the background. You thought this moment was big, but He saw it was only loud. Not deep, not stable, not safe. Just loud enough to distract you from what was still unfinished inside you. Because deep down, your vision had quietly shrunk. You stopped asking for greatness and started begging just to be okay. Not because you didn't believe in big things anymore, but because disappointment had become too familiar. So you adjusted. You lowered your expectations to avoid the pain of being let down again. And without realizing it, you started making your life smaller just to protect yourself from future heartbreak. You called it maturity. You told yourself, "This is realistic now. This is safer." But Allah saw something different. He saw that the version of your story you were about to accept wasn't the one He wrote for you. It was the one shaped by tiredness, the one you were slowly settling for because you were just too exhausted to hope anymore. So He paused your life. He shut the doors you were running toward. He removed the people you thought would stay. He delayed the chapter you were desperate to begin, not because you weren't ready, but because the chapter itself wasn't worthy of you. He didn't want to see you rise in a place where your soul would be hidden, where your potential would be misunderstood, where your story would end too quietly. You were about to receive something small and call it a miracle. You were about to settle for an applause from people who didn't even know what you survived. And Allah said, "No, this isn't where you stop. This isn't where you shine. This isn't your stage." So He paused your story. He let you feel stillness, so you would finally hear what your silence was trying to teach you. You are not meant to arrive in places that require you to shrink. You are not built for destinations that don't recognize your soul. You are not created for halfway blessings just to satisfy tired prayers. What you called delay was actually mercy. What you called failure was actually filtering. And what you thought was being overlooked was divine redirection, because you were seconds away from stepping into something that would have stolen years from your future. Not with noise, but with quiet suffocation. And Allah knew you'd thank Him one day for not giving you what you thought you couldn't live without. Because what's coming when He finally turns the page won't just be loud. It will be undeniable. It won't just be success. It will be divine timing. It won't just arrive. It will rewrite everything you thought you had missed. So sit with this silence. Let your soul breathe again. Because Allah didn't pause your story to hurt you. He paused it to protect you from living a life too small for the heart He's still rebuilding. 2. He let the crowd disappear so you could discover the mic in your silence. There was a time when people noticed you. They saw your effort. They applauded your presence. Your name came up in rooms you hadn't even entered yet. But now, it's quiet. They don't ask about you anymore. They don't check in like they used to. They stopped cheering. They stopped clapping. And it almost feels like you stopped mattering. You didn't change. Your sincerity didn't disappear. But somehow, they did. And you're left thinking, did I do something wrong? Why did I go silent in their world when I was finally starting to speak in mine? But here's the truth. The crowd didn't leave because you failed. They left because Allah removed them. He didn't let them stay long enough to shape your identity with shallow compliments. He didn't let their noise become your mirror. He didn't let their feedback become your fuel. Because what was coming next in your story needed depth, not decoration. It needed honesty, not hand claps. And so, He cleared the room. He let the invitations stop. He let your voice fade from their conversations. He let you experience what it feels like to say something from your heart and hear nothing back. Not to break you, but to build you without dependence. Because as long as the crowd kept clapping, you'd keep performing, and the mic in your hand would never carry your truth, just their expectations. So He gave you silence. Not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of alignment. So you could finally ask yourself, what do I sound like when I'm not trying to impress? What do I believe when I'm not trying to be understood? Who am I when I stop seeking noise and start seeking Allah? That's why it felt like everyone forgot you. Because the version of you Allah is preparing isn't built for crowds. It's built for impact. And impact doesn't require everyone. It just requires the right alignment with heaven. And heaven can't echo a voice that's still chasing validation from earth. So Allah muted the crowd. He let the applause die out. Not because you don't deserve it, but because you were made for a platform He's still constructing. One where you don't need to perform. One where your story doesn't need decoration, just revelation. And when that moment comes, you'll speak, and it will cut through noise. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. Because it was born in silence, raised in sujood, sharpened by nights when no one else listened, but Allah did. And in that moment, you'll realize the crowd didn't disappear to punish you. They disappeared so you could find the mic Allah was always holding in front of you, the one that only activates when the soul is finally free from the addiction to being heard. That's when your voice becomes unstoppable, not because it's the loudest, but because it carries a frequency only the sincere can hear. And when you speak again, the world won't just listen. They'll feel how long you stayed silent to protect what Allah was still forming. 3. The fall that shamed you was the gate that protected you from fake victory. You thought you were rising. You finally believed, this is it. The pieces were falling into place. Doors were opening. People were noticing. It felt like your story was finally being written with light. And then, everything broke. Suddenly, brutally, quietly. The job slipped through. The person changed overnight. The plan fell apart, and you collapsed into a silence you didn't see coming. You were embarrassed, ashamed, angry at yourself, because you didn't just lose something, you felt like you became the loss. People didn't understand. They whispered. Some even smiled quietly at your downfall. And the most painful part? You started believing them. You started thinking maybe they were right. Maybe you were the problem. Maybe you really did mess it all up. But what if I told you, you didn't fall because you were weak. You fell because Allah pushed you away from something that was never written to carry your soul. It wasn't a failure. It was a gate. A locked one. One Allah slammed shut right as you were about to step into a version of success that would have eaten you alive quietly, slowly, beautifully. It looked like a breakthrough, but inside was ego, was compromise, was the loss of your heart in the name of winning in their world. That spotlight you were chasing, it was built on a stage that would have collapsed beneath your sincerity. That relationship would have drained your worship. That position would have pulled your heart out of alignment, one hidden compromise at a time. But you didn't know. You only saw the glitter. You saw the timing. You saw how close you were. So when it fell apart, you didn't see a blessing. You saw a breakdown. But Allah saw the whole map. He saw how far this victory would take you, from yourself and from Him. So He let the collapse come, loud enough to stop you, hard enough to make sure you wouldn't go back, deep enough that you'd never forget what it feels like to be rescued in disguise. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it humiliated you. But even that was part of the protection. Because if it had ended quietly, you might have gone looking for it again. You might have thought, maybe I was just too weak. Maybe I can still fix it. But the way it fell apart, the speed, the betrayal, the finality of it, was Allah saying, I love you too much to let you earn something that would have cost you your soul. You didn't lose. You were intercepted. You didn't fall. You were snatched mid-step from a version of success that would have made you loud in the world and silent in the hereafter. And now, you're still healing, still wondering why it happened, still looking at the ruins like they hold the answer. But one day, you will walk into a blessing, so pure, so peaceful, so perfectly timed. You'll cry, not because it's beautiful, but because you'll remember the fall that protected you from something that wasn't. And you'll whisper, Ya Allah, thank you for not giving me what I begged for. Thank you for making it fall. For you thought your value was lost, but Allah was hiding it from thieves. You started to feel invisible, unnoticed, unchosen, uninvited. People stopped asking how you were. They stopped calling your name in rooms you thought you'd earned a place in. They started treating you like someone they could replace. And over time, you began to wonder if maybe they were right. You looked at yourself and asked, did I lose my worth? Did I stop being valuable? Was I only ever seen when I was useful? And slowly, painfully, you started folding yourself smaller, quieter, less, just to avoid the pain of not being seen at all. But here's the truth your tired heart forgot. You were never less. You were hidden, not because you lost your value, but because your value became too pure to be placed in the hands of people who didn't know how to protect it. There were people around you who didn't love your light. They wanted to own it, not admire it, but control it. not protect your heart, but drain it in exchange for momentary closeness. So Allah didn't let you stay in their story. He didn't let your name stay in their mouth. He didn't let your sincerity become their currency, because He saw what you couldn't, that your value wasn't disappearing. It was just being guarded, not from strangers, but from familiar faces who smiled at your soul, while secretly measuring how much of it they could take before you noticed they were stealing. You see, not all thieves come to rob your wallet. Some come to borrow your softness, your loyalty, your light, only to disappear once you're empty and confused and left wondering why they never said thank you. So Allah said, no more. He sealed you. He cloaked your beauty. He covered your heart like a treasure that no one could touch except the one He handpicked for it. That's why they stopped seeing you. That's why you stopped being their favorite. That's why they suddenly lost interest. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were finally too guarded to be used. And that's not rejection. That's rescue. You didn't get smaller. Your light just became too sacred to shine in rooms that weren't built to hold it. And one day, you'll meet people, maybe just one person, who will see you not as potential to manipulate, but as a soul to honor. And when they do, you'll realize the silence wasn't the end. It was the shield, the divine curtain Allah placed around you to protect you from being reduced to relatable by people who were never ready to respect you. So stop asking why they left. They weren't locked out. They just weren't invited into the version of your life where your value is no longer negotiable. Allah didn't hide you to punish you. He hid you to preserve you, and nothing hidden by Allah ever returns without a purpose. 5. He froze your movement because your soul was outpacing your reality. You were moving. You had momentum. You were finally beginning to feel like things were shifting. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. You didn't understand it. You didn't feel lazy. You weren't distracted. But somehow, everything started slipping away. The motivation faded. The people faded. Even your own passion began to feel distant, like it was no longer yours. And you started wondering, why am I stuck again? Why can't I move forward anymore? Why does it feel like Allah pressed pause on everything right when I was finally trying to rise? But what you couldn't see was that your soul had been running faster than the world around you could handle. You were growing in secret, becoming wiser, praying more, healing, letting go of things you used to beg for. Your soul was waking up, but your external world, your relationships, your surroundings, your identity was still stuck in the version of you that no longer existed. You were becoming new, but still standing in places designed for the old you. And Allah saw the misalignment. He saw how your soul had outgrown the people around you. He saw how your heart had evolved, but was still waiting for a reality that hadn't caught up yet. So He froze everything. He didn't let the blessings arrive yet. He didn't let the people come closer. He didn't let the path open, not because you were failing, but because He knew if He let you continue at that speed, you'd reach a destination that would suffocate the man you're slowly becoming. So instead of letting you rush ahead, He protected you with stillness. He made sure you didn't build on a foundation that was cracking underneath your feet. He made sure you didn't open doors that would have welcomed people who only recognized your past, not your purpose. It felt like punishment, but it was precision, because the version of you that's unfolding now needs a reality that can hold it, needs people who won't be confused by your silence, needs surroundings that won't be threatened by the power Allah is slowly unlocking in you. And the truth is, you were ready in heart, but not in environment. Your soul matured, but your life needed time to catch up. So He delayed what you thought was yours, because giving it too soon would have made you shrink again, would have forced you to perform for people who still knew you by your wounds, not your wisdom. And Allah didn't spend all this time healing you just to watch you become a prisoner in a life you've already outgrown. So He froze the motion. He paused the plan. He silenced the noise, not to stop you, but to give you space to realign your reality with the weight of your soul. You didn't lose momentum. You were being recentered, because when the movement returns, it won't be rushed. It won't be fake. It won't be you trying to keep up with a world that never really saw you. It will be divine. It will be matched. It will be a life finally built to carry the depth of who you've quietly become. And that is worth the stillness. 6. The ones who forgot you weren't meant to handle the version that's coming. You remember how close they used to be, how much they used to care, how they made you feel seen, valued, maybe even safe. There was a time they knew everything, your fears, your hopes, your quiet prayers, and you truly believed they'd be part of your story until the very end. But then, they stopped showing up. They stopped checking in. They stopped asking how you were, even when they knew you were going through something. And the hardest part wasn't even their absence. It was how easily they seemed to move on, how quickly they let go, how silently they made you feel like you never mattered at all. And you began to question yourself. Was I forgettable? Was I only valuable when I was useful? Did I overestimate what we meant to each other? But I need you to hear this with your soul. They didn't forget you because you lacked worth. They forgot you because Allah removed them before they could mishandle the version of you He was still forming. You see, they knew how to hold the wounded you. They knew how to speak to the insecure you. They knew how to comfort the smaller you, the one who didn't yet know his worth. But they weren't designed to carry the healed you, the sober you, the version of you who is finally learning to walk in quiet dignity, without begging for closeness from people who were only ever meant to be passing shadows. Allah knew what you didn't, that if He allowed them to stay, they would have tried to shrink the new you to fit the memory they were comfortable with, because your expansion would have made them uncomfortable. Your growth would have exposed their stagnation. Your light would have become too bright for people who only loved you in your brokenness. So He let them drift. He let you feel their absence, long enough for you to stop waiting for their validation. He didn't do it to isolate you. He did it to preserve you. Because the version of you that's coming, the one who no longer apologizes for having boundaries, the one who prays without needing to be rescued, the one who speaks without needing applause, that version cannot be handled by people who only knew you when you were still doubting your own value. Allah didn't let them forget you to hurt you. He let them forget you so they wouldn't be able to follow you into a chapter that was never theirs to witness. They won't recognize you soon, not because you've changed into someone fake, but because you've finally become the man you were always meant to be. but were too afraid to become, when you were still busy trying to be loved. And now, you don't need to be loved by everyone, because the love of Allah and the loyalty of those He handpicks will feel more than enough. So don't mourn who forgot you. Don't chase the ones who walked away like your story depended on them, because if they could leave you in your becoming, they were never meant to witness your becoming at all. The next version of you, the one being silently written by Allah right now, is too rare to be handed to people who only know how to hold what's easy. You were not forgotten. You were hidden, because what's coming is not just another version of you. It's a version they wouldn't know how to handle, even if they tried. 7. The door didn't open, because you would have walked in alone, unarmored. You stood in front of that door with hope in your chest. You knocked with sincerity. You prayed like it was the only thing left holding your life together. That opportunity, that chance, that breakthrough, you could feel how close it was. And for a moment, you even smiled, because everything seemed to finally align. Everything felt right. And all you needed now was for Allah to open the door. But He didn't. He kept it closed. And it crushed you, because you weren't asking for much. You weren't chasing fame or something haram. You were just asking for a chance to breathe, to rise, to finally feel like something was going your way. So when the door stayed shut, you didn't just feel rejected. You felt abandoned, left behind, like maybe you just weren't chosen. But what you didn't see, what your exhausted heart couldn't understand in that moment, was that behind that door was a battlefield. It looked like a blessing, but what waited on the other side required more than excitement. It required armor. It required wisdom you didn't have yet, spiritual muscles you hadn't built yet, scars you hadn't earned yet. And if Allah had opened it when you asked, you would have walked in alone and unarmored. You would have been exposed, vulnerable, too trusting, too unprotected, still carrying the version of you that says yes to people just to feel wanted, still shrinking yourself just to avoid conflict, still hoping someone else will save you from the wounds you never showed anyone. And Allah, in His mercy, not His silence, said, "Not like this. I won't let my servant walk into something that will wound him deeper than where he just came from." So He let the door stay locked. Not because you weren't ready to receive, but because you weren't ready to protect what you were about to receive. What's coming isn't just a blessing. It's a test, dressed like a reward. And if you're not armored in truth, in boundaries, in tawakkul, in silent worship that no one sees, you will lose yourself, trying to hold something that looks like it was meant for you, but was never meant to arrive until you were stronger. So Allah paused the plan, not out of cruelty, out of strategy. He slowed your pace to sharpen your eyes. He delayed your moment to discipline your soul. He held you back because the next version of your life can't be walked into with the same emotional armor you wore when you were still begging for validation. He is teaching you how to fight without flinching, how to love without losing your standards, how to walk into new rooms without looking for someone to carry your self-worth. Because when He opens that door again, and He will, you won't be walking in broken anymore. You'll be walking in armored, calm, clear, quiet, not loud with excitement, but steady with knowledge. I was built for this, and I won't lose myself in it this time. And when people ask you later, why didn't it happen earlier? You'll smile, not in regret, but in gratitude, because you'll realize the delay was never about the door. It was about you. 8. Your voice wasn't ignored. It was being sharpened for a world that would have to listen. There was a time you tried to speak. You tried to explain your pain. You tried to express your heart. You tried to share your truth. And it felt like every time you opened your mouth, the world just looked away. They changed the topic. They dismissed you. They heard the sound of your voice, but never the weight of your soul. And after a while, you stopped talking, not because you had nothing to say, but because no one ever stayed long enough to listen. You told yourself, maybe my voice isn't that important. Maybe I should just be silent. And for a time, you were. But what you didn't realize was that Allah was still listening. Always. Not just to your words, but to the spaces between them. To the heartbreak behind your silence. To the sincerity hiding inside the pain you couldn't articulate. While the world ignored you, Allah was recording you. While they cut you off, He was collecting every unspoken word, storing it in a place where divine timing would one day echo it back through you in a voice that no one would be able to silence. Because your voice wasn't useless. It was uncooked, unsharpened, still soft from trauma, still shaped by the need to be liked. And if He had released it too early, you would have used it to seek validation instead of delivering truth. You would have spoken just to be heard, not to heal. So Allah muted the world around you and placed your voice in fire. He let you go quiet in their conversations so He could awaken your soul in His presence. He placed you in situations where your voice was tested, broken, and reformed. Not for approval, but for impact. Because the voice He's building inside you isn't meant to entertain. It's meant to shake souls awake, to say the things others are too afraid to say, to carry stories that only you could survive, and speak them in a way that no one else could deliver. You thought you were being ignored, but really, you were in training. Divine, painful, sacred training. And the people who laughed at your silence, the ones who thought your quietness meant weakness, they won't be laughing when Allah says, now, because when He finally commands your voice to rise, it won't just be loud, it will be undeniable. It won't beg for attention. It will command it through its truth, its depth, and the anointing it carries from years of being unheard. They won't know how to respond because they never imagined the one they ignored the most would be the one they'd eventually have to listen to. And the silence you once hated will become the power behind every word you speak. Not noise, not empty speeches, but surgical truth, sent from a soul that was sharpened in fire and released by the permission of the One who hears all. So don't curse the quiet seasons. Don't regret the years they didn't hear you, because when Allah decides to release your voice, the world won't be able to unhear it, not because of your volume, but because of the weight He placed in every syllable you once cried in silence. You haven't been muted. You haven't been erased. You haven't been forgotten. You've just been held back by the most merciful, because the version of you that the world needs to hear is still being carved in secret. And when Allah is ready to release your voice, it won't just be heard, it will be remembered. The silence you hated will become the sound that shakes hearts awake. because the loudest part of your story was never meant to be written in front of them. It was always meant to be revealed after Allah finished protecting you from every eye that would have misunderstood your rise. Wait, but wait with dignity, because when He turns the page, you won't need to speak loudly. The world will hear you through the weight of your survival, and every soul that once overlooked you will finally understand why Allah took His time